It's all increased, really. We've got more tech tools, we've got faster software, we have greater ability to connect well. But there are still hard realities of time differences and cultural differences.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Byte. My name is Hafez. And today we have a very, very special guest. We live in an age where technology is deeply embedded in our personal and professional lives, sometimes for the better, sometimes at the cost of our focus, productivity, and even well-being. And with AI accelerating how we work, how do we stay digitally healthy and maintain a human-first approach? And today I'm joined by Harriet Pellereau, CEO of Mind Over Tech, who helps businesses and individuals reshape their digital habits for a better, more balanced future. Now, Harriet, before we dive in, tell me, was there a moment in your journey that made you step back and say, something needs to change in how we interact with technology?
Absolutely, there definitely was. So firstly, just thank you very much for having me. It's a real honour to meet you and to be here. Yes, my journey in founding Mind Over Tech really started with a moment with my daughter when she was just nearly 5. She's just about 4, just approaching 5. And at this point, I have been working in the kind of technical education space for a long time, really founded my whole career on my interest in technology, my interest in teaching myself how to use all of these tools, and love technology and really have kind of excelled in my career as a result of curiosity for how things work and the kind of ability of technology to solve problems and to kind of create stuff.
Yes.
And then I had kids. So my daughter's growing up and she's looking around the room and she points at the smoke alarm on the ceiling of the room and says, Mommy, what's that? Explain. If there's a fire, then the smoke alarm will detect the smoke and it will let us know, that we need to get out to keep ourselves safe. And she says, will I have time to get my teddy? And I said, the most important thing is that we all get out of the house safely. And she looks at me with a face of horror and says, but Mummy, you can't leave your phone. And I realized that I had given the impression that my phone was one of the most important things. The idea to her that I would leave it behind was so shocking. Her little face. I suddenly thought, wow, you're only 4. You've picked this up already, that this is such an important thing in my world. Is that okay? Is that okay? And really started to consider what cues I was giving around my phone, what she was seeing, and how that was actually reflecting the way I was parenting and maybe how I wanted to parent, I guess. So for me, it was very much triggered by a moment of suddenly becoming more conscious of the way I was using my tools around my kids. Then that also made me start to consider other areas where maybe my digital habits weren't aligning or what I wanted to be focusing on in that moment. And I have actually now had a diagnosis for ADHD. And so for me, understanding that my brain loves novelty, it loves new things, has really helped me understand really my career and how I've ended up where I have and the kind of decisions I've made along the way, but also help me understand that I have a vulnerability to distraction. I have a vulnerability to technology popping up with some new interesting thing, an email here, a notification there actually can really derail me in the moment. And so this comes from a sense of technology is wonderful and gives us so much, but we need to help ourselves to get the best of it. We need to learn what works for us and figure out how to, I guess, manage those distractions because they're getting more prevalent and embedded in our lives. Yeah.
Wow. Harriet, what a way to start the episode because my goodness, many of the things that you talked about, curiosity, tech curiosity, using these tools, it's a wonderful tool. Amazing. We very much talk about that on the show, and at the same time, our kids in many cases can be a reflection of what's happening without us realizing. And I think you had a moment where you saw that reflection, and all of a sudden you said, oh, wow, there's something here I need to work on. And it got you to start thinking about this. It's phenomenal because it's an absolute topic that needs to be discussed, because you're right. And it doesn't take a diagnosis of ADHD for us to start thinking about how this new digital world, it's not new, but it's been around for a while, but how as it becomes more and more prevalent in our lives, it's really starting to affect us. So that's a great story of self-reflection that got you on that path. So let's back up a second now and kind of take a look farther back. Let's widen the lens and talk in general about digital overload and the challenge of modern work. How would you say our relationship with technology has changed in recent years, especially when it comes to in the workplace? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So I think the first thing to just kind of speak to is the fact that it's all increased, really, that we've got more tech tools, we've got faster software, we have greater ability to connect well. I mean, we're chatting across, incredible. We're able, and it's so seamless and integrated into our working practice now. But there are still hard realities of time differences and cultural differences. And these are the type of things that people are navigating. And I have another kind of experience of this, which was that during the pandemic, I was working for this incredible company, Decoded. And the mission of Decoded was to demystify the technical world and to help people understand how things were being made in a technical space. And so it was very much founded on in-person training experiences. And we would put on these really lovely days where people would come into the space in the office. We would have some conversation around what technology is, how it's founded, and get people hands-on, trying and building, getting them coding. People who'd maybe never coded in their lives before would be creating something, feeling that sense of creativity. And we would talk to them about some of the jargon. We'd have people saying, I use jargon all day long in my professional life. Like I'll say, oh, I'm sure there's an API for that. And everyone always nods, and there always seems to be an API, but I don't really know what an API is. And we'd sort of demystify some of these terms that had maybe snuck up on people in industries like advertising. It hadn't been a part of their world. Yeah. And when the pandemic hit, suddenly everything was online. Everything had to be taught online. And luckily, we were all a bunch of geeks. We loved tech and we loved tools. And that transition was actually fairly seamless. But what I noticed in my team, now at this point, so I joined Decoded back in 2012. When the kind of pandemic hit, it had shifted much more into data and teaching people about data and running apprenticeship courses, helping people upskill their data analyst experience and knowledge and all of these tools. And I had a big team of 40 data scientists and various other team members. And so when we switched, I suddenly had this big team who we were still recruiting. There were people onboarding during the whole of the pandemic. And they were doing that virtually. And we were all running these workshops over Zoom and other platforms, virtual platforms, and we were onboarding people that way. And the things I noticed were that people got tired on a virtual call than if we were to meet in person. So we had to, this is the same for learning experiences, but also for team interactions. We had to chunk things much more actively. You couldn't have a half-day workshop sitting on a Zoom call. Like, that's pretty obvious, but we have physical bodies. We need to move them. We need to engage with each other. And so it kind of required and caused me to really consider people's work environments, how they were sitting at their chairs, like how often they were getting to speak to people, what kind of communication was taking place through Slack and the other tools we were using. So it was a lot more consideration needed for that transition. And I think that the pandemic accelerated a lot of tech use in the workplace. Yeah. And it also had to push, I guess it pushed into our mind a lot of a very, very highly tech digital workplace where everyone is completely remote, and what that means and what we need. And there are very specific things that you can do and the things that people need. But I think it has changed. The working world has changed dramatically over the last 5-10 years, definitely propelled by the effects of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful thing that you bring to bear, which is the fact that the pandemic really did accelerate that. I mean, when we think about what the pandemic did, is it got everybody to be online for a year, a good better part of a year at least, if not longer. And of course, the effects of that have continued on in that a lot of the businesses that are clients of mine, I find that many of them have decided to move to fully remote, that they meet now only over Zoom, which is great for enabling teams to be able to work together regardless of location. But I am a firm believer in the importance of getting people together. There's just communication, nonverbal energy that happens in person that doesn't happen over Zoom. And you're bringing up a very interesting point about how the pandemic really did truly accelerate the use of digital tools, especially for just meeting as we're doing right now. And that has definitely caused us to adopt it more without us realizing just how much more we are using technology than we did before. I mean, it used to be that we had, we'd go to work and we'd have water cooler talk and people would see each other and stuff. And now it's all over Zoom. So then how would you say then, Harriet, in this case, would you say the businesses have unintentionally reinforced bad digital habits? And what do you think we can do differently?
I think that when it comes to adopting new technology and new tools, we often make assumptions about how they should be used. And so as an example, one thing that we quite often see as a topic of discussion when we're working with an organization is how instant message platforms are used within a team. So I mentioned Slack earlier. So quite often it'll come up that someone in the group will say, I find it quite difficult to focus on my work because of Slack. I'm checking Slack and I'm having to respond quickly to messages and requests that are coming in, and I'm checking it all the time. And we've had a CEO of this group and say, wow, I didn't know this was causing any tension for people. I would rather that you check that platform a couple of times a day and were able to focus on what you were doing. And the kind of change, the shift in the group of like, oh, right, like the unassumed expectation that everyone had placed on this platform that it was instant and therefore it required an instant reply as a behavior, as a requirement, as a modern worker in this organization, when that had never been explicitly said by the leadership at all. They never even thought to say it. And that honestly comes up quite often. The same is true of email. A leader, a manager sends an email outside of hours. Maybe they don't expect a reply out of hours, but the fact that they're sending it sort of suggests that maybe they are, and that they require their team to reply out of hours. And so this kind of idea of unintentionally creating digital behavior within your company is one of probably the most useful things that we can explore with a company, is just unearthing those, opening up those conversations so that they can be making a bit of a clearer directive. Now, obviously, every organization is different. And if your job is to reply to email, then you're going to be your email a lot. But if it's not, then having some clear boundaries around when you're checking it can be useful. Now, what we're always very keen to say in any of the sessions that we run, the work we do, is that every person is an individual and has individual needs from their tech, and every organization and team is different. So our approach is to encourage people to adopt an experimental mindset and to learn what works best for them. So we ask them to try something out, be that time boxing their email into certain sections of the day or their Slack messages, be that experimenting with how long their meetings are, how they set them up, these different things. That there are so many brilliant ideas. They don't all work for every person and every team, but trying them out allows you to learn how that actually affects you. And these tiny shifts can have really big changes and impact to people.
Amazing. I love how you talked about this, because it creeps up and people don't realize. And it's important for the leaders of these organizations to be mindful as well of how that is affecting the work culture, the employees. So much of your work, it seems like it focuses on behavior change. So, besides how leaders can play a role in creating digital well-being, kind of a culture of digital well-being, which is something I'd love to get your comments on, I also want to hear from you about how you feel individual digital habits matter in the workplace, right? In other words, so what can the benefit be for the organization when leaders make digital well-being important in the culture, and also how does that affect the work culture when individuals in the organization put digital well-being as one of the core kind of tenets of how they get stuff done? Okay,
so just to kind of dial in on one thing there, you said the benefit to making digital well-being a priority, to focusing on that. So there's lots of different things that our clients might come to us with a specific challenge around. It might be that they are looking to boost performance with their team. And that's a big one. They're looking to optimize. And we often work with organizations, consultancies, law firms, people with very high performing, demanding staff who are people in roles that are very demanding. And they're wanting to really support their people to perform as well as they can. Because there's this idea of taking someone who's maybe being overwhelmed by their working world back to the center, and then there's actually taking them into a place of thriving. And I think that we're trying to support in both those directions, because when a company starts to think about adopting like a newer AI tool or something, they want that to land and they want it to shoot the performance of their team forward. And if there's challenges around how that tool's actually being used by the team, that's going to limit the boost of performance that can be seen there. So increasing performance and productivity is certainly one area. And performance covers well-being as well, and feeling agency and feeling well connected and all those things. Another area might be in sort of employee value proposition. So retaining staff, attracting staff, particularly for early career. So we've got a whole generation, the first generation, who are digital natives, who've grown up in a world of social media and connectivity in a way that I didn't. And they have had to learn resilience. They have had to learn how to stay focused as students at uni with all of this distraction around them in order to kind of succeed in their careers to get to where they are. They will have developed strategies, and they will want to continue to be using tech. And they a lot of surveys and studies show that the youth in career today really want to increase their technical skills. However, they are also keenly aware of some of the negatives, maybe in a way that other generations haven't felt before, but the impact maybe that they felt, or the people around them, in terms of their well-being and in terms of their connection at work. So to have an organization strongly signal, we know this is a challenge, that's extremely powerful. And actually one of the biggest bits of feedback that we get in our sessions when we say, what was your biggest takeaway is it's not just me. I thought I was the only one that found this hard. I thought I was the only one that struggled with this. And I'm sort of always surprised by that, because it's so obvious to me that this is affecting everyone. But, we carry on in our lives and we think, oh, I'm the only one that's, maybe struggling or not feeling as much agency in this as I should. I would say there's benefits to hiring and attracting and retaining staff. There's benefits to improving performance. There's also, I would say, an opportunity for leadership to connect with their teams, because this is something that really and genuinely affects everyone, and everyone is keen to learn about. So one thing we'll often do is invite a senior leader at an organization when we're running a workshop to run one of our digital habit experiments before the session, and then live at the session, how it went, and talk about maybe what worked, what didn't work, what they found challenging, what they learned. And sometimes we'll have, like a law firm, not too long ago, we had a senior leader who was very resistant to doing this and said, I have excellent digital habits. I don't have problems with this at all. I'm probably not the right person, was quite resistant, but in the end, begrudgingly tried to not look at his email at certain times of the day. To the session and said, I was astonished. I thought that I had really good boundaries. And when I actually started observing my behavior, I realized that I don't at all. And when I wasn't allowed to look at my email on my laptop, I was just using my phone and I was completely cheating. And I didn't realize that this was actually affecting me too. And actually to have a leader say that and to open the floodgate of like, actually, everyone is struggling with this. Let's all talk about it. Let's share our experiences. Let's share our tips. Talk about the fact that we're experimenting. That's really powerful to shift culture, which is, all of this stuff. We sort of talk about technologies as being a bit of a Trojan horse here, that we're talking about your email, but quite quickly you start talking about how you use your time, and then and then the meaning of life. And it gets quite deep, quite quickly. This is all human, very much the human in the center of all of this. So I think there can be huge impact and benefit for business to take this seriously and to explore this alongside adopting all the incredible tech that is available.
This is such powerful stuff. You're blowing me away here with some of the things you're saying, because you're talking about leaders that were themselves not mindful of that, and having that transformation happen for them means that there's going to be a huge transformation for their organizations and work culture. We love tech, but and you have being the CEO of Mind Over Tech, the idea of being mindful about our tech usage and how that is can affect our productivity, but also affect our mental health. Super hugely important. I really love some of the anecdotal evidence that you have of this and what you've done with organizations. What is one thing, before we jump into AI, because AI is a kind of a big world now, and it's become something that we have to be mindful of as we figure out how we work with AI agents and how we work with AI tools that now are talking back to us, whether it's through chatbots or what have you. Before we jump into that, what is one small but impactful habit that you feel people can start to do today to improve their relationship with technology?
Oh, that's a great one. Okay, which one am I going to pick? I think that one thing to consider is how your mornings are impacted by technology.
Good. Okay.
So that could mean using a physical alarm clock, because yes, our smartphone is the most versatile and incredibly reliable alarm. Yeah. But if you use it as an alarm, chances are
you're going to check it first thing in the morning.
Your eyes, unless you have an iron will,
yes.
You're going to keep that open and you're just going to be checking. You're going to be checking your email. You're going to be checking LinkedIn. You're going to be checking the news. You're going to be inviting someone else's agenda, an opinion that maybe you're not ready for at that moment, when just a bit of space in your morning could help just to set you up for success for the day. My husband has absolutely no issue with this whatsoever. Like, he has no problem not using his phone in the morning. Right. I'm the worst. Like, I have to actually go to a bit more of an extreme length, and I have to plug my phone in to charge somewhere outside.
Else. Yes. Yeah. I've done the same. I'm like you, Harriet. I love tech. I mean, I grew up with technology, and I love technology, and I have every tool under the sun. I really love it, but I realize, like you, there's addictive habits that come with it, and it's psychological, because when I wake up in the morning, there is this urge to see what the email that I sent yesterday, what have I gotten a follow-up? I made a post on LinkedIn. Have I gotten some good feedback on that post? And then just it's, as somebody who's in tech and in AI, I also want to know what's going on. So the first thing is, has there been any news in the AI world and you hit the nail on the head in that the first thing that when we wake up, the digital world is not where we want to start our life in the morning. Every morning, we don't want to start in the digital world. We need to start very much in the physical world. We need to stretch and see the sun and go for a walk and interact meaningfully with our loved ones. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a tip that I actually personally, like you, ascribe to. I hate I both love, there's an itch to check my phone, but I hate checking my phone in the morning because I realize that the mornings where the first thing I do is check my phone, I've already lost the battle, because at that point, the mind over tech aspect of things, I've already lost. My mind is already lost. The tech has already won. I've started my day with that's the first thing that's on my mind. So very, very powerful. If nothing else, I mean, this episode is great so far, but that tip, I think everybody can take that tip and run with it, because we need it more than ever.
And I encourage people to try it, but I don't say it with a judgment that if someone finds it useful to check for their kind of anxiety, like everything's okay, great. Like there are no, unfortunately, silver bullets and best working patterns in this space. There's what serves us and there's what doesn't. And so I think what we're really trying to focus on in the work we do is to develop these metacognitive skills, thinking about our thinking. What do you observe about your behavior, and what have you noticed that causes you to do? And considering your intention behind all of the uses of technology that you have during the day. Are you being intentional? Because one person's hour on Instagram is incredibly enriching, and actually calming. I know people who get quite anxious and they just look at cats on Instagram.
And if you've curated your Instagram feed in a way that actually gives you content that is good for reducing your anxiety and stuff, whether it's spiritual, whatever,
job or connecting to your friends, there's so much positive outcome that can be found in a tech interaction at any time. But if you spend an hour on Instagram and afterwards you're like, oh no, I'm now late for this, I feel like I'm wasting my life, I actually feel a bit rubbish because I just saw something that makes me not feel so great about myself or whatever, that is an opportunity.
Or news that doesn't make you feel good in the morning.
I'm now just feeling a bit bummed about how the world is going and feeling out of control. Then maybe that's a signal. Like these things, these tools, they can be sources of distraction and all of the rest, but they can also be a mirror for what's going on inside. And I use mine a lot in social environments when I'm tempted to reach for my phone because I'm feeling a bit social. Actually be a trigger for me to notice, oh, hey, you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, aren't you? Like I can see you're reaching for your phone. Is that actually going to be the best way to improve the feeling right now, or is it just going to be to walk boldly across the room and get a drink and just start talking to someone? Like is actually standing at the edge on my phone going to serve me in this moment, even though and it's like using that to notice my own thoughts, my own thinking, and just make every moment that we have with our devices something that's of value rather than something we don't feel in control of or we might regret.
Amazing. And speaking of as a mirror, let's now dive into AI's role in digital well-being. And here, I want to make sense of where we fall in the friend or foe when it comes to AI, because AI is changing everything. We see it's being incorporated in workflows, it's creating productivity, it's even affecting personal habits. And now the way I think about it is AI is now a manifestation where there's an aspect where it's really talking back to us. I mean, we're working with agents, we're working with chatbots. When we talk about embodied AI, the human AI workplace, and collaboration that exists therein, does that help us actually gain focus, or does it potentially amplify distractions? How do you see AI in the digital well-being space? Is it a friend or a foe?
Great question. I naturally am an optimist, for better or worse, and I exist always in a place of hope and seeing the potential and the kind of opportunity in a situation. So I am naturally inclined to be optimistic about where AI will take us. With that in mind, I am conscious of the fact that it's all in how it's used. It's all in how it's deployed. And I think it could be a tool that will help us become more aware of our patterns and nudge us into new behavior and be used to actually promote positive habits and help us become more aware of what we're doing in ways that maybe we're not able to see at this moment. I think there's immense potential for it to support our well-being in the workplace. I think the workplace is fundamentally going to be shifting and changing. Jobs and roles will be shifting. Again, I'm optimistic. I hope that it will be used to allow humans to be more human in the work that we do, to do the things that we are naturally really good at, and perhaps shift the things that into a place where it can be handled more effectively, producing masses of reports, pulling together data. Maybe that's the kind of stuff that humans don't need to do anymore, but we can then make add context to that information. We can build a narrative to it. We can take that information and make it meaningful. That is the piece that I often come back to with artificial intelligence, is that for something to have meaning, it has to have an intention behind it. And intention and decisions are founded upon emotion. We actually know this from studies that have been done into people that have had unfortunate brain damage. If parts of their brain that relate to emotion are damaged, it makes it very difficult for them to make decisions. Humans make decisions based very strongly on emotion, and machines lack emotion entirely. So they can make a beautiful piece of art, but there's no reason why they've made it. They've made it because a human has told them to, and a human thinks that it's beautiful.
No emotion behind it.
No emotion, no reason, no rationale behind there. So I believe that AI can be an incredible tool to amplify human creativity and productivity and connection and well-being. And my hope is that we will be able to push further forward in what we can do as humans with these tools around us. And in terms of the workplace, yes, I think things are going to shift and certain jobs are going to change. I think what's also worth bringing into this is how other jobs are going to get worse. Because, data sets require labeling, and AI tools rely on huge data sets. And I think maybe I worry about the hidden cost. Workforce.
The hidden cost in human work that has to happen as a result. Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe in some areas, and then I see maybe there being costs and environmental costs and other things. So there's big challenges, and I do remain optimistic, but also quite conscious that there are big challenges ahead, I think.
And I love that you're, again, we share so much in common. The optimism is great. I'm like you, I'm an optimist. I believe in the power of technology to help positively affect, human life. But of course, there's a right way and potentially wrong way of integrating AI into our digital lives. And what we want to do is find that balance. And I think it's going to fall on leaders, on the organizations that integrate it, to help the organization culturally as well, and their people as a result find that right balance. Because I for one also find that AI can be quite helpful in many cases for giving me a look at my digital habits. And there's a way that you can do that. It takes being mindful, right? It takes understanding and having self-reflection on the usage of the tech in a way that also allows you to, I use AI to help me find out how well I'm doing. I can set limits and so on and so forth. Now, in your experience with working with organizations, have you seen, from your experience, a right way to integrate AI and potentially not a right way? And overall, just, Harriet, given your expertise, and I know you've talked on stages all over the world, and I could see that there's a lot of passion behind this mission for you. Do you feel like we're designing AI tools currently that are mostly designed for efficiency, or are we also designing them for better engagement and prioritizing well-being? Like, where do you see that kind of the compass, where are we heading? Are we heading in the right direction? Do we need a little bit of a course correction? What do you think? Really
good question. Honestly, I think most companies at the moment are really grappling with how best to integrate these tools. And what I'm hearing from some of the leaders that we're speaking with is they're actually coming across a bit of resistance and fear from their workforces in terms of adopting tools. And that's actually a really natural place for us to sit, is insisting the rollout of these tools. Most people I speak with have dabbled with things like ChatGPT and are like exploring ways in their world that they can enhance their work. Most companies are being very cautious at the moment in exactly how they kind of roll tools out. There's a prominent law firm that we're working with who are kind of leading in the AI adoption space for their lawyers. I think they're doing a very good job in adopting those tools in a way that is thoughtful, and at the same time they're being quite bold. And I'd say they're one of the first organizations that I've worked with who are saying, we've done all the analysis, this is the best tool for us, this is what we're rolling out, and everyone get on board. Also, there is a sense of, we want to be leading on this, so we'll be working towards that, talking to their people about how this is rolled out and providing, and they have the resources to provide the support, the technical support to kind of get this into everyone's working practice. One thing I do see is that when a tool like ChatGPT is used to do a task, there is sort of what could be described as metacognitive laziness that can come alongside it. If you're okay, so for example, to make it less abstract, if there's a tool that you use for navigating, I use Google Maps to get around. I genuinely can't navigate London very well at all. I'm like,
whereas back then we would have had to work on that. Yeah.
Right. I used to have a tiny A to Z, and I'd almost be able to navigate myself around, and I've lost that because not that I was very good. I don't really see it as a big loss, but I certainly haven't strengthened those pathways. I haven't developed that skill because I've been relying on my tool. That's fine. That's a decision I've made, a convenience decision. But I think that the truth is that when we use AI to solve a problem, it doesn't let us develop. It doesn't let us learn
that
in the
skill. No, it does it for us.
If it does it for us, if it's like a kind of help me like improve this, and then I can see what it's done and I can see it's working, then yeah, that's a great tool. It's very nuanced. It's a very nuanced thing, but letting people use it to just find the answer may be the right tool to improve the skills of the workforce, I guess. So that might be a word of caution, is being very specific in how and when it's used.
And how we use it. What we're going to use it, what kind of mental shortcuts we're going to take with it. Because, and I love the analogy you brought up, because I remember a time when I had physical maps in the car, or we'd have these big maps, or there was at the cusp where we would print out Google Map directions. There was another, I forget what the name of, there was another application, it was a maps application, but you'd say, I'm trying to go from A to B, so I'm going to print out these directions. And now we have, a console in our car that basically says turn right, turn left. And as you mentioned, we've gotten to a point now where I'm just as guilty as you of this, where I don't feel like I actually need to, have a sense of direction, because I'm just going to follow what the GPS tells me to go. And I've noticed that this, to a certain degree, makes it so that I've gone to a place several times, but without a GPS, I'm like, I don't really know how to get there. Which is one of the reasons why one of the best ways, if you really want to become a master of direction, especially around the area or where you go into your office or whatever, walk it or bike it, because that's really the only way. If you don't do that, if you don't actually engage your mind in terms of how you go from your home to the office, from A to B, and you're using tools to do it all the time, you're right. That does, give us a little bit of, we get lazy and we don't learn anything from it. What I hear now is this idea of when you ask people, oh, did you read that book? They go, well, I got ChatGPT to give me a summary of it. And you're like, oh no, you should probably read the book, because there's going to be reflections that you're going to make along the way. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, in terms of the navigation, like one of our experiments is leave your device behind. Navigate without GPS is another. So like just practicing in an environment that's safe, and that you're like, no bad things will happen if I'm late, then let's try it as an experiment. And we ran a session for a working family network at a big consultancy last week, and one of the experiments that we were encouraging is, to try and get places with your family as a kind of quest. Let's try and get here
let's get on the road and figure it out.
Let's do it without tech. Let's go on a journey with tech, and that idea of adopting a kind of experimental mindset within your family as well. I think a big thing to talk about in terms of maybe risk, but also opportunity in this is misinformation. So you said I've been speaking a bunch of different places. I was in Riyadh at the end of last year at the Global Forum, and that was all about youth. It was a big forum all about supporting the youth, and I was on a panel talking about misinformation. And one of the opportunities I think we have with AI is to actually start to use it to flag potential misinformation. And I met this amazing woman from a company called Nissan.ai, and what they do is they actually try and serve up in places like YouTube and TikTok ads and things which are telling people like, this is the kind of content you might see, this is stuff to be aware of that might not be true, and you might want to sense check, just to give people some skills in how to navigate that. Because alongside, we've got all the potential of misuse for generative AI and extreme control of the narratives out there, to also be tools to educate and help us find the truth out there. I think there's opportunity there alongside great challenge.
It's good. We need to frame it that way. So looking ahead, right, we really want to build a human-centric tech future. I mean, I really believe that with my mission at Bytewise, it's similar. I do it from a different angle. For you, Harriet, and for Mind Over Tech, what does a healthy digital workplace look like, especially in an increasingly AI-powered world or tech-driven world?
So I think the key of this is that it is a place which is talking and constantly learning about how their people are using their tools. That this is a live practice, this is a live conversation, because it's not a one and done having a healthy, high-performing relationship with your tech. It's a little bit like you buy your gym membership, you need to go. You buy your running shoes, you need to get out there on the trails. Like, you need to continue to monitor this, because we can form habits that don't serve us really quickly. But our message is you can form better ones quickly too. And by spending a tiny fraction of your time considering how these tools are impacting you in the workplace and how they're impacting your team, letting your team talk to you about what's working, what's not, and creating what we call team charters and manuals, individual manuals, that this is how I know I like to work. This is what I'm learning about my working practice, that something like the Pomodoro technique really works for me in these days of focus, and that email batching can really help me get down to work. But on other days, there are other things that I can do, and that actually by putting in my email footer, these are my working days, all right, I'm sending this email to you because it's a convenient time. Don't feel like you need to reply straight away. Being explicit about your expectations on those platforms. If you have a culture that is actively thinking about this, it can adapt, it can adjust to the future of whatever tech is coming. It's not a static thing. Culture is not static. So to answer your question, what does a healthy digital habit culture look like? It's one that is reflecting on it constantly. I guess the work that we do is in a few different areas. We have training talks, which were kind of awareness, really trying to raise awareness to this challenge and say, hey, we're all in this together. We're all doing well. We're all thriving, but we could be doing better. And let's talk about this. Let's set a common language around the organization of what it means to be working on your digital habits. Let's introduce some experiments. So you talked about the experiment box that we have. It's called the Digital Habit Lab. That contains 50 different experiments that include various ones that I've talked about today, but lots of nudges and ways that we can work on our digital habits. And then the other thing that we do is to train up a kind of train the trainer program, where we create digital habit champions within an organization that can keep that conversation going.
Amazing.
With them. So those are the kind of directions and things that we have found can support that and to support companies on that journey.
Phenomenal. I would love to bring you to many workplaces, or past and future. So what's next then for Mind Over Tech, and how can people learn more, especially if, the leaders, the CEOs that are listening to this, how can they engage with you so that they can make digital well-being something that is part of their culture?
Well, probably the best place is to reach out on our website, so mindovertech.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got very weird surnames. It's easy to locate me, and just get in touch. We'd love to speak to anyone. I think companies that are ready to engage with this are going to be leading in this space. I think that as technology pushes us into new places and into new working practices, being mindful of how we do that and helping our people thrive in those environments will be critical. In terms of the future for us, we are constantly trying to consider how best to help people. We're constantly looking how best to measure the impact of, our next focus really is publishing some research about this and really exploring what the impact of this can practically and tangibly have in organizations, to make that a bit more of a conversation out there. Because at the moment, soft skills, all a bit soft. How can we make this something that people can really connect with and engage with? So, I guess if you're interested in helping us do that, it'd be great to hear from you as well.
Well, thank you very much, Harriet. This has been an incredibly amazing, impactful conversation. I seeing the work that you do on LinkedIn with Mind Over Tech, it's been an honor to have you a guest on the show. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. For those listening, if this episode made you rethink your digital habits, please let us know in the comments or reviews. Check out Mind Over Tech. Check out the amazing work that Harriet is doing. And as always, stay mindful, stay balanced, and keep learning. Thank you so much again, Harriet.
Thank you so much for having me, Mo. It's been a pleasure.